Second part of session 71 of the Law of One. Let's talk about white magic. What is that? Let's find out. Well, in the last part, we got into question 8, I believe, and the conversation was going around the topic of death and when the mind-body-spirit complex goes into time-space, how it's healed, how it programs itself, and all of that. So I left it at that because the next conversation goes into a bit of astronomy or cosmology. And even though next question here that I have is asking about the processes, it's a little bit confusing to me, but we'll figure it out. What matters is the answer that Ra gives and what they talk about, really. But I'm saying all of this because of the connection that I usually make when going from one part to the other. And there doesn't seem to be much of a connection with the topic, as you'll see. But in any case, there's not much to refresh for the same reason that I kind of alluded already, that there is no connection between the conversation, or not no connection, but nothing to remember to process the next questions. So the next question I have here is question 9. So let's start with this. We have several questions to cover and really fascinating stuff, by the way, so I just want to get to it. I'm anxious to get there. So question 9, Don says, are the processes that we are talking about processes that occur on many planets in our Milky Way galaxy, or do they occur on all planets, or what percentage? So this is the part where I'll talk about it, but Ra says these processes occur upon all planets which have given birth to sublogoi, or plural of sublogos, such as yourselves. The percentage of inhabited planets is approximately 10%. So just to be thorough, my lack of connection is that they were talking about the processes of healing and all of this, especially in negative time space. That was the last question that Don asked in question 8. If in negative time space there is still a healing process and all of this before incarnation. So Don's saying, is this happening across all the planets, many planets, or what percentage? Right? He says, are these processes, whatever they are, as opposed to healing, review, it just seems like a unconnected question, because I would rather ask, is there evolution in other planets? Because some planets may be like, say, Mercury or Jupiter, you see, that doesn't have any life, apparently didn't have in the past, it won't have according to Ra. So some planets definitely are simply, in my opinion, they seem to be placed there for the cosmic effects that it has on the archetypical mind. Seems to me, little that I know about that. So it seems like a reasonable question, but that's what Don is saying here. Are the processes that we're talking about happening on other planets, and what's the percentage, right? And so in any case, the conversation goes into, okay, these processes occur upon all planets which have given birth to sublogoi, such as yourselves. So it seems like Ra is giving context to it and saying, well, the processes of evolution, which is really what life review, healing, and programming is all about, right? We're talking about the creator experiencing itself through mind-body-spirit complexes. So it stands to reason that the processes happen in all planets that have sublogoi, or mind-body-spirit complexes like us. It's interesting that the sublogoi, the way that Ra mentions it here, and this is for the people that understand my compression of what the mind-body-spirit complex is, not as an independent agent, but simply as a window in which the creator sees itself, right? So I actually like the word sublogo here, because they are encompassing not just the window, but the creator within, right? Ra sometimes mentions the creator lies within, because it seems that we are experiencing a without, which is not real. It's only apparent, this without expression. And we're going to get into this fascinatingly in this last part of the session. So please bear with my excitement today, because some of the questions are just beautiful for introspection, true introspection, and just exploration of the self. So, all right, bear with me. Now again, just to give a little bit more of this excitement, I like that Ra uses the word sublogoi to refer to this window in which the creator is seeing itself through the apparent separation of the mind-body-spirit complex, if that makes sense. Now, the percentage of inhabited planets is approximately 10%. Now, here's where I want to speculate, just because I am a little bit of a nerd on this, and I like to get percentages and numbers and all of this. Now, from our perspective, which could be completely wrong, in our scientific materialist perspective, we have between 100 to 400 billion stars. Billion as in 1,000 million. I don't know if in other countries billion means trillion, but in my language, Spanish, billón or billion refers to a million. So not a thousand million, and then a trillion would be a million billion, right? So it gets confusing with English because we use the word billion to refer to 1,000 million, which I don't know if I like it, but things that I have to convert in my mind sometimes when I'm reading English. So in any case, we're talking about stars in the galaxy, Milky Way galaxy, to be, and I'm also imposing my own view that Ra is referring to the Milky Way galaxy. Maybe, yeah, well, Don asked about the Milky Way galaxy, so I guess it's fair for me to say Ra is referring to the Milky Way galaxy. What's the other option? Could be referring to the whole universe, but let's just say it's the Milky Way galaxy. And they say the percentage of inhabited planets is approximately 10%. And what are the numbers that we have? 100 billion to 400 billion, or 1,000 million planets. So 10% of that would be, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's see how many are inhabited. That's the, not inhabited, in the next question. The percentage of inhabited planets is approximately 10%. Okay, so I'm going off a tangent here. Let's read the next question. That's going to give more context. Question 10. Don says, what percentage of stars roughly have planetary systems? That's better. Ra says, this is unimportant information, but harmless. Approximately 32% of stars have planets as you know them, while another 6% have some sort of clustering material, which upon some densities might be inhabitable. Here we go. So now I can speculate. All right, so out of the 100, let's go with the conservative number, and I think it's better for math, 100 billion stars. Then 32% of those stars, so 32 billion stars, have planets, while another 6%, so another 6 billion or so, again, you can multiply this by 4 if you want, to account for the possibility of being 400 billion stars in the Milky Way galaxy. So another 6% or 6 billion have some sort of clustering material in which some densities might be inhabitable. I think that refers to 5th and 6th density. I'm not sure if 4th, but it could be. And so we have that. Okay, so 6% may have that, but let's just go with 32 billion stars in our galaxy have planets. Of those planets, 10% are inhabitable. Right? That's what Ross said previously. The percentage of inhabited planets is approximately 10%. Now, inhabited by what is the question? And now I have a further difference. I don't know what's the right word, but discrepancy with these numbers. And it's the following. That would mean that 3.2 billion planets, or rather stars, have inhabited planets, right? 3.2 billion stars. That would be 3.2 solar systems or star systems or galaxy systems, as Ra further confuses. So 3.2 billion stars. Okay, they have planetary systems. However, in session 16, and maybe it's me being confused by this, but they said it's 67 million stars, right? Let me just reread. This is question 26 in session 16. Don asked the following. Roughly how many total planets in this galaxy of stars that we are in have aware life, regardless of density? And they say 67 million. Now I know what you're saying, and it may be, well, Don said aware life, so the other ones may have regular life, not just aware, like say animals, for example, or even first density. But you see, in the next question, in question 27 of session 16, Donna actually asks, well, what percentage of those are 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th density? So you would think, oh, they were talking about different densities. But Ra gives a percentage for 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th. Not 6th, because they have to withhold the information. So yes, they were talking about inhabited planets of all densities. Now 67, according to 3.2 billion, it's a long margin. So somebody's off. Maybe our view of stars is wrong. How could that be? I don't know, errors in observation. Maybe Ra is wrong by saying first 67 million. Maybe I am wrong because I'm not calculating everything well. I'm not sure. So this is for bigger nerds than me, which I am not really interested in getting into these numbers because they really mean nothing in the essence of the law of one. But I just thought it was interesting. So I figured I would mention it and say that something's wrong in our numbers. I don't know which one it is. Could be Ra, like I said. Could be our observation of stars. Maybe some stars are not really stars, just like we saw quasars in the past and said, oh look, really bright stars. And they're like, no, they're actually galaxies. And then we're like, we don't know what they are actually. And they're very old too. So what are quasars? I'm sure we have an explanation now and so on, but you get my point. Is that our observation sometimes is off. You know, it's only human. So, okay. Now, Don understands this, and in the next question says, well, this would tell me that roughly 3% of all stars have inhabited planets, which would just give a, shall I say, mind-boggling idea of the number of entities, which I assume then this process of evolution is in use throughout the known universe. Is this correct? Ra says this octave of infinite knowledge of the one creator is as it is throughout the one infinite creation, with variations programmed by sublogoi of what you call major galaxies and minor galaxies. These variations are not significant, but may be compared to various regions of geographical location, sporting various ways of pronouncing the same sound vibration complex or concept. Speaking of complexity, what a paragraph. Seems daunting, but it's not. So I'll explain. Alright, so first of all, Don says that, okay, if 32% of the stars have 32% of all the stars have planets, and 10% of those stars have inhabitable planets, then it's 3%. That's correct. 3% because, see, 100% of the stars, only 32% of them have planets, and only 10% of that 32%, which is 3%, have inhabitable planets. And that would be tremendous, of course, because in any case, we're talking about millions and millions of different life forms that exist through all densities. You see, I mean, the closer you get to the extreme on the densities, it's basically the same. It's the same elements or vibrations, and it's the same sort of unity in the end. It's what's in between that provides the experience. And that's what Don is asking, like, wow, you know, this is great. And he assumes that this process of evolution is in use throughout the known universe. Now here's where I'll get a little nerdy again to dissect the question and give you what Ra said. Don says, I assume then this process of evolution is in use throughout the known universe, meaning this process of becoming the one, you see? And obviously, I mean, it seems like a simple question, but Ra refines it, and by their refinement is that we get this paragraph that seems daunting. Ra says, this octave of infinite knowledge of the one creator is as it is throughout the one infinite creation, with variations programmed by sublogoi of what you call major galaxies and minor galaxies. So first of all, in this first half of the paragraph, Ra is saying, in essence, the octave of infinite knowledge is the universe. The whole universe is an octave of experience, right? And the variations programmed by sublogoi of what we call major galaxies and minor galaxies are simply the archetypical mind that is created by the logos and then refined by each galaxy being a logos, and each star being a sublogo, right? So this sublogos decides to refine it further. I'll repeat that. The archetypical mind is as it is, and then the major galaxy, meaning say the Milky Way galaxy, has its own arrangement of archetypical mind, which in turn gives to all the stars to tweak on its free will to create the experience of the planetary systems. So that is the refinement that Ra is talking about, because Don says they're all going through the same process of evolution, and Ra says, well, first of all, they go through changes. So it's not the same process of evolution. The archetypical mind varies between stars. These variations are not significant, but may be compared to various regions of geographical location having different languages. I'm not going to repeat what Ra said, but sound vibration complex or concept. Just the way, not only language, but even the way we pronounce the word, right? Because they say pronouncing the same sound vibration complex of concept or concept. So yeah, you can only see, or you can rather see the difference between these processes of evolution between all the stars, similar to how we pronounce words. Like listen to my accent and the way I pronounce things. This is all quite different than somebody else who is from my country, you see? And then you will find that within the country there's people who speak differently. So all these variations are just similar to what the evolution in different stars and planets, also in planets, because there are variations within the solar system, just like Venus has a different variation than Earth, Mars, Maldek, and that's it. That's all I'm going through. So yeah, I love this topic because we can just philosophize about this, all these constructs that we have within the law of one, cosmology in general. But yeah, it's not that important. That's why Ross says this content is, or what do they say? This is unimportant information, but harmless. Yeah, because it's just unimportant for... Why is it unimportant? Because the important stuff is evolution, right? So this is not really relevant. Knowing how many planets are inhabited and what language they use and all of this external exploration is interesting, but it's not important. So it's also harmless in the case that it's not infringing upon free will. Some information is, so they don't go into it. But we're interested in important information. So let's move on. Don says in question 12, and please bear in mind that the answer to this question is correct, that it is correct. Don says, then it seems to me from this that the sub-logos, such as our sun, uses free will to modify only slightly a much more general idea of created evolution, so that the general plan of created evolution, which seems then to be uniform throughout the one infinite creation, is for this process of the sub-logoi to grow through the densities and, under the first distortion, find their way back to the original thought. Is this correct? Ra says this is correct, as I'll show you here, right? This is correct in question 12, but what did Don say? The sub-logos, that's our sun, slightly modifies this general idea, that would be the archetypical mind, of created evolution, so that the general plan of created evolution, that is the process, the blueprint in which we're going through right now, is set and seems to be uniform throughout the one infinite creation, right? It's the same arrangement and playing with the archetypical mind in different ways, of course. Is for this process of the sub-logo to grow through the densities. It's all. I would suggest here that is the purpose, of course, is to experience itself through the different arrangements. It's like different rules for the game, right? Just like say Dungeons and Dragons has different rules, and people play Monopoly with different rules. Same game, but different rules and same purpose. Under the first distortion, find their way back to the original thought. Well, what's the original thought? Is that the creator will know itself, and it does know itself, and so on. So yes, that is the purpose of all this arrangement of archetypical mind. Now again, this seems daunting, and it can be a fascinating study when we get into the archetypical mind and how it works and all of this. It's definitely the most intense study of the law of one. But for now, I guess it's just important to say that the archetypical mind is the way in which the mind is arranged for the creator to know itself, period. So the mind can be arranged in an infinite ways. And this mind arrangement is not something that we change consciously. It is the blueprint in which the mind will experience itself. Let's even put it that way. That makes sense, you see. So that's the archetypical mind. That's what we're talking about here with different configurations that happen between the galaxy and the stars. And that's it. We're ready for the next question. Don says in question 13, then each entity is on a path that leads to the one destination. This is like many, many roads which travel through many, many places, but eventually merge into one large center. Is this correct? Ra says, this is correct, but somewhat wanting in depth of description. More applicable would be the thought that each entity contains within it all of the densities and subdensities of the octave, so that in each entity, no matter whither its choices lead it, its great internal blueprint is one with all others. Thusly, its experiences will fall into the patterns of the journey back to the original logos. This is done through free will, but the materials from which choices can be made are one blueprint. Yes. So here's a beautiful answer. First of all, Don states something that seems obvious to us, but still, he says, each entity is on a path that leads to the one destination. Yes, we're all seeking the one. This is like many roads which travel through many places, but eventually merge into one large center. All roads lead to God. Oneness. And so, of course, Ra sees the simplicity of the statement and says, yes, this is correct, but we want to get deeper into it. And Ra says that more applicable would be the thought that each entity contains within it all of the densities and subdensities of the octave. Why is there some beauty here? Because we're still living in a paradigm, a social paradigm, that we are being affected by the external world. In other words, we depend on the external world for us to be content, comfortable, happy, in love, in acceptance, and so on. It's almost like we are scared of our own image, and we're expecting that image to tell us how to be. And we're ignoring the fact that we are projecting the image. You see? So this places the responsibility that everything that you see is being projected by yourself, as opposed to saying, well, things are just happening to me. See, this is the ignorant part of the self that doesn't understand its true nature. And again, I always clarify that the term ignorant here means ignoring, not knowing. You see? So, unknown, the unknowing of yourself. This is why the most important thing in all of this that we study, that we philosophize, that we spend countless hours in, is the knowledge of the self. Because from ourselves is that everything is coming out. You see? So, Ra says more applicable would be, because maybe Don is saying, oh, many roads that we travel and they're all leading to the one. Well, oneness is not far from this road. In any case, the road that we seem to be taking is a projection of the inside. So if we feel separate, then we will feel like we're on a road of separation, finding the one, until we travel this road long enough to find that it's been created by us. And so if it's created by us and our yearning is to feel one, then stop creating the road. Stop externalizing yourself as a separate being and start communing with this pure essence of what you are, which is unity. The universe lies within, not without. I mean, for the materialist, the reason why we have billions of galaxies and trillions of light years, actually I think that's wrong, but we have an expanded universe. The farther we look, the more we're going to find, because it's us that we're seeing out there. So we're looking into infinity with limited eyes. The more we look, the more we're going to find. But the point is that all of this scientific materialist point of view of the universe is coming out from the sense of separation. You see, so we're going to see a universe that is separate from us. That's what we're looking for. We're creating roads of separation. And so how many galaxies do we need to visit and learn about cultures and traditions of different ETs and travel around the whole universe? That's the yearning of the scientist, to find oneness. Well, probably never, because the more we want to go outside and learn separation, then the more we're going to find separation. The harder it is to conceptualize unity. Whereas it only takes one to open your eyes and say, well, yes, all I see is one. In other words, I don't see anything else but oneness. This is not a philosophical view. And this is why it's not mystical. It's a simple understanding that the field of view, which is consciousness, that you are, is already one. You don't have two. The feeling of separation, the feeling of two-ness or manyness, is a perception. It's not real. The only real thing is that all appears in consciousness. So you see, that's what Ra is indicating here, in my point of view, my limited point of view, or limited interpretation, I should say. When they say, the thought that each entity contains within it all of the densities and sub-densities of the octave, so that in each entity, no matter whether its choices lead it, seems to lead, because it doesn't lead you anywhere actually, its great internal blueprint is one with all others. Of course, because we're taking the oneness, I mean that the immaculate consciousness that has no division, fragmenting it into the archetypical mind of the logos, and then the sub-logos, and then into the sub-logos that we are, and saying, look at this. This is something new. This is completely new. I've never experienced this. You see, so it's an inner projection, and it ends here. It ends in separation. You see, but when we get distracted in separation and we keep running around in circles, then it seems like we're getting somewhere. You know, it's like getting one of those field tracks and start running around. You say, boy, am I going to get somewhere. You know, ignoring that you're seeing the same landscape. You're ignoring the floor and the markings and everything. You see, but the writing's on the wall here. It's just one field. Clearly what we need is just to settle down, go inside and find this universe. Alright, so they say, thusly its experiences will fall into the patterns of the journey back to the original logos. This is done through free will, right? Through free will, we go into this journey, just like we have projected it outside. When I say we, we're talking about the logos. The logos that we are have projected itself through these layers of fragmentation, right? To create this beautiful flowering of the human kaleidoscope, that I call it. See, but then from this view of separation, which we say, wow, this is great. Then we say, okay, I came here to see everything. Now I go back. See, you go back to unity. Unity lies within. This is done through free will, this journey back. But the materials from which choices can be made are one blueprint. Because there's only one blueprint, and that's the archetypical mind set by the logos, which is guided by the original thought that the creator will know itself. And in this knowing of itself, it uses all of what it knows to create the creation. I told you I get excited about this, so let's keep reading. Question 14, Don says, you have made the statement that pure negativity acts as a gravity well, pulling all into it. I was wondering, first, if pure positivity has precisely the same effect. Could you answer that, please? Ra says, this is incorrect. Positivity has a much weaker effect due to the strong element of recognition of free will in any positivity approaching purity. Thus, although the negatively oriented entity may find it difficult to polarize negatively in the midst of such resounding harmony, it will not find it impossible. We'll reflect upon that in a minute. But Ra continues saying, upon the other hand, the negative polarization is one which does not accept the concept of the free will of other selves. Thusly, in a social complex whose negativity approaches purity, the pull upon other selves is constant. A positively oriented entity in such a situation would desire for other selves to have their free will and, thusly, would find itself removed from its ability to exercise its own free will. For the free will of negatively oriented entities is bent upon conquest. So here's the paradox. Not properly a paradox, but the confusing part of why this is all coming from the previous sessions when Don and Ra talked about the displacement into negative time space of a wanderer. So it would have to reincarnate in the proper density, let's say in this case 6th density, and need to switch polarities to negative in order to continue its evolution. So Don asks again the same question. You have made the statement that pure negativity acts as a gravity well. This is the answer that Ra gave to explain why the mind-body-spirit complex in such a situation needs to polarize itself negatively in order to evolve. I have covered this extensively in the past sessions, so you must be up to date, I hope. If not, you gotta go back and watch it, and rewatch it, or reread. Better to reread. Okay. So, now Don is asking if the positive entity has the same effect. And first, Ra explains that no, positivity has a much weaker effect due to the strong element of recognition of free will. So, it doesn't disallow negativity. You see, this is crucial for our mentality of understanding negativity, the desire for separation. Let me put it that way. For us to understand the desire of the Creator to separate itself from itself, that is very important. Because why? A lot of people say, well, I can't understand why I'm here in such a negativity. I don't understand why people behave this way or commit this terrible crimes against humanity and all the terrible things that people say and so on. I cannot understand that. Well, this is perhaps a glimpse into positivity. Positivity doesn't disallow negativity. It just respects free will. You see, now it is difficult for a negatively oriented entity to find negative polarization here. Why? Because everybody is in harmony. And so it's difficult to manipulate somebody who is in harmony with itself. This is why yogis and Taoists and Buddhists actually have been seen as unwanted by social controlling agencies, governments mainly, because they represent a sort of non-fear to what may happen and allowing of everything to be positive and negative. They don't care, they don't fall into dogmas or doctrines or laws and all of this, and so they seem to a degree anarchists. Taoists, for sure, they seem anarchists because somebody's behaving that way, they should behave that way. Why should we repress it? So government, scared of course, comes and puts it into order. So this is the view of the positive being. Okay, so in the midst of such resounding, it's not impossible because they can still find some way of controlling and manipulating others, right? Always seeding unhappiness. That's how the negative ones fertilize their soil in people. Just seeds of doubt in the mind. Now, on the other hand, says Ra, on the negative side, the negative polarization is one which does not accept the concept of the free will of other selves. So, when you're surrounded by full negativity, talking about full negativity, this planet is not near enough to become negative. So, please don't use this planet as an example for negativity. There is, yes, a showcase of negativity for sure. Can't deny that, but it's not the purity that Ra is talking about here, the pure negative. There is such a thing as pure negativity. So in that pure negativity, it's not allowed free will. Free will of other selves is not allowed. It's control. Everybody needs to be controlled. There is no free will. So in a social complex of this purity of negativity, the pull upon other selves is constant. You're pulling them. That's why it's a gravity well, that Ra says. A positively oriented entity in such a situation, what would the positive entity want? Everybody to have free will. But they don't. They can't. And so it finds itself removed from its ability to exercise its own free will, because its free will is to decide that others have free will. Just like a logos does, right? The logos free will is the pure free will of let there be light. Go ahead and do what you must, right? But it cannot find any further polarization or evolution in experience, because that's not the way of the positive. And so it needs to go through the process of negativity, which is long, as we have explained before. And yeah, the free will of the negatively oriented entities is bent upon conquest, something that the positive entity is not interested in. So the positive entity, that's why I said that this is not tragic. This is just a wonderful experience for the creator. People may say, Gabe, how dare you say that? Poor creator. Really? Poor creator? The creator is everything. We're humanizing the mind-body-spirit complex. We are creating this drama into the mind-body-spirit complex, which I'm not saying is wrong, but it's funny to attribute that to the creator, because the creator doesn't know anything. It's just experiencing all things possible, and to it is just amazing, anything. So that's why I say that this path of becoming negative after being positive is quite the experience. Oh, it's going to take longer, Gabe. Didn't you hear Ra say that it's going to take longer? Well, who's in a rush? Is the creator in a rush to evolve? No, that's the ego. And I keep saying it here. All this rush to be changed, to be transformed, to become one, it's the ego. There is no self trying to become one. The only self that exists is one already. It only needs to be realized. Period. That's it. It's that simple. But we have make it abstract and complex for the purposes of study, for the further exacerbation of our intellect. That's why, you see, but it's not so simple. In any case, I can keep going, but we need to keep going with the session. Question 15. Don says, could you please comment on the accuracy of this statement? I'm going to generally talk about the concept of magic and first define it as the ability to create changes in consciousness at will. Is this an acceptable definition? Great question. Now we get into white magic, or magic in general. Ross says this definition is acceptable in that it places upon the adept the burden it shall bear. It may be better understood by referring back to an earlier query in your measurement within this working having to do with the unmanifested self. In magic, one is working with one's unmanifested self in body, in mind, and in spirit. The mixture depending upon the nature of the working. Ooh, great. I love this. So, what is Ra saying here? First, Don is saying that magic can be defined as the ability to create changes in consciousness at will. It's pretty good, because let's get some definitions out of the way. We're trying to define magic. Okay, so create changes in consciousness at will. You create changes in consciousness at will when you are more aware of yourself. So for example, the method that I use, the direct path, teaches that all you need to do is become aware that you are aware. You may say, well, that's useless. I know that I am aware. So I know I am aware that I am aware. What's next? Well, the following part of this method, of course, is question, who are you? If you have realized that you are aware, then who are you that you keep talking about yourself? In this exploration, you keep going back into, well, I am that I am. That's it. But my life is predicated on a self that seems to have problems and issues, and what am I to do that? So my question is, well, who are you to make it changes? You see? So this is the constant rabbit hole in which spiritual seekers, keep getting into. And speaking by experience, of course, I went through this process of, I gotta change this, I gotta do this, I gotta do that. And it's almost like the flower saying, oh my God, I gotta pull the moon, I gotta pull the sun, I gotta pull water for myself. You don't do that, flower. You, beautiful being, only stay there in the soil awaiting all of these things. Cloudy, oh my God, what do I do to take these clouds away? I need the sun, or too much sun, I need clouds and water and so on. A flower doesn't concern itself with that, you see? And so we shouldn't concern ourselves with change. Here's a long discussion about the methods that are used compassionately for the separate self, what I call harmonizing the mind before dissolving it. It's almost like pacifying, or what some people call it humane. I am of the opinion that it's not. I understand that, yes, instead of just relentlessly kill animals for consumption, give them like a little softening before they die. I understand that, but it's sort of, that's exactly what we're doing to the mind. You see, we're softening it to kill it, because at the beginning it's all neurotic. But like I said, that's a long discussion. But here my point is that if you're following me, that in my method, it's not my method, it's the method that I prefer to use. It's non-duality at its most empirical and without requirements, no knowledge of anything. That's the direct path. Otherwise it wouldn't be direct. You would need prerequisites, which I think it's nonsense or unnecessary. Yes, I think everybody's able to realize that they are aware. And if you know that you're aware, then you can question yourself. That's the hardest part, really. It's called the direct path, but it's not the magic pill. It places upon yourself the responsibility of keep self-inquiry. That's the key. But in any case, we're talking about this method. Why is it relevant to this? It's because Ross says, better understood, be referring back to an early query, and your measurement within this working having to do with the unmanifested self. Well, first of all, Ross says that the definition of making changes in consciousness, that's where I started. Sorry, I got sidetracked. But let me go back to that. So how do you make changes in consciousness from the direct path, which is what is my preferred method? Well, you observe. You observe that which seems automatic in you. I'm naturally reactive this way, Gabe. I can't help but be angry. Okay, well, just observe it. Don't do anything about it. It's okay. You're reactive. Just observe it and say, am I that? No, I'm not that. what happens when you take away the identity out of the reaction? Magic happens. That's the change in consciousness that happens, at least from my point of approach, my preferred method of observing. Magic happens there. People report it and say, I don't know how it happened, but yeah, just looking and observing, things completely change. And I didn't change it, of course not, because you don't exist. It's only the you that is observing that is becoming aware of the processes involving the reaction, emotions, actions, relationships, and so on. It's a beautiful, beautiful thing. There is a reason why me being so into the raw material, the biggest complexity of metaphysics that you can find in the whole world, all compressed in one big 2 volumes or 4 books, whatever you want to see it. And I'm fascinated with all of this stuff, but I put all of this aside and I say, this is not necessary for you to learn about yourself, to know who you are, and to clear up everything. And at the same time, we're healing, knowing ourselves, balancing, becoming one, polarizing everything through the direct path. I just love it. Now, can we go to the answer? Some of you may be saying, yes, let's go to it. So Ra says, this definition is acceptable in that it places upon the adept the burden it shall bear. You are responsible for the changes in consciousness because you need to know yourself. And this is going to get even better, my friends. So Ra says it may be better understood by referring back to an earlier query. I talked about this, I think this was, right? We talked about the unmanifested self. I know I did. The unmanifested self, I have a separate video if you're interested. Just search unmanifested self. It's a little extract of the session. So yeah, go back to the unmanifested self. What is the unmanifested self? Well, in my books, in my understanding, the unmanifested self is that which is spontaneous of itself. See, it's Zitran in Taoism. That which is spontaneous of itself. It doesn't need anything from the external world. You see, that is Tao in its most precise and beautiful application. That is the unmanifested self, Zitran. So, when you're working with the unmanifested self, which Ra says doesn't require other selves to be, then this flowering of the self comes about. When you work with it, then changes in consciousness. Does that make any sense? I hope it does, because I talked about the observing, something that you can see in A Course in Miracles, in Gnosticism, in any mystic approach, in, of course, Buddhism, coming from non-duality, from the essence of it. We'll talk about this, just observing. By you observing, you're working with the unmanifested self, that which recognizes what it wants. I can talk about this for hours, but this is my gift to you. I give it to you freely. So here it is. Okay, in magic, one is working with one's unmanifested self in body, in mind, and in spirit. What's happening? Just observe it. The mixture depending upon the nature of the working, of course. Now, they keep saying more interesting stuff, fascinating stuff actually, when they say these workings are facilitated by the enhancement of the activation of the indigo ray energy center. The indigo ray energy center is fed, as are all energy centers, by experience, but far more than the others is fed by what we have called the disciplines of the personality. Too much. I need more videos for this session. I'm kidding. I'm going to finish it. But wow. So we were talking about these workings. All right, what is this working? To create changes in consciousness. That is magic. We're talking about true magic, not, Harry Potter magic. Fascinating as it is, okay? Don't get me wrong. I love the Harry Potter franchise. I'm using it as a sort of comical way to say, "Ooh, I'm going to create magic with this and that." No, true magic refers to make changes in consciousness. So these workings, at least from my distorted view, these workings that I explained before as the direct path that I enjoy so much, are facilitated by the enhancement of the activation of the indigo ray energy center. What is the first quality of the indigo ray? Unity, non-duality, no polarities. Everything is one. You see? Sacredness in all. This is the enhancement, see, that is given to these workings. So, no matter what approach you have to non-duality, which again, let me emphasize that non-duality is not something that is for the Taoists or the Buddhists or whoever, Sufis. No. This is about the essence of who we are. The direct path obviously uses non-duality. Non-duality is everything. Non-duality is a way of saying we believe, not we believe, we know, because we check in on ourselves, that there is no two. You see, so this is what enhances the workings of magic. Now, if this wasn't enough, Ra says the indigo ray energy center is fed, just like any other energy center, by experience. In other words, every experience has the potential of feeding your indigo ray. Of course, if you have blockages or you have a sort of experience that you need to process through the heart and so on, it will go through those filters. You see, but from the heart, it's easy to bring it to the indigo. So blockages is really what we need to pay attention to, become aware of, right? So all experience feeds the energy center, the indigo energy center. However, more than other energy centers, is fed by what we have called the disciplines of the personality. What are the disciplines of the personality? Know yourself, accept yourself, become the creator. It all ties in beautifully. Know yourself. Who are you? Accept yourself. Well, that comes easier once you know who you are. Become the creator seems automatic once you know who you are. You see? These are the disciplines of the personality. But as I practice it with my students, it is about first knowing yourself. The direct path brings you first to who are you? You go there first. Accepting yourself is then looking at everything that is happening within yourself and saying, yes, I accept everything that is happening. Once you accept everything that is happening, or let me put it this way, in the process of accepting what's happening, the creator is shining. So it's not like 99.9%, I can't open that file yet, the creator has not been activated. It's not like that. It's very mechanical. It's a flowering. You don't look at a seed and say like, oh, at any given moment it's gonna just pop into existence as a flower. It just grows. And that's the beauty, the growing, the blooming, the blossoming of the flower. So you see, it's so perfect. It's beautiful and perfect. It's perfect and beautiful. All right, I can continue talking about this, but I want to finish this session today. So let's go on. Question 16. Don says, I will state that the objective of a white magical ritual is to create a change in consciousness of a group. Is this correct? Ra says, not necessarily. It is possible for what you term white magic to be worked for the purpose of altering only the self or the place of working. This is done in the knowledge that to aid the self in polarization towards love and light is to aid the planetary vibration. Great answer. First of all, let me just say that Don, of course, was interested in ritual magic and all of this Ra, not so much. That's why I kind of relate so much with Ra too, because they're very simplistic. Well, non-dual teachers are, in general, you see. So that's why I love it. So yeah, it's not to make a change in a group, although it can happen, I suppose. Magical ritual. But Ra emphasizes it is possible for what you term white magic to be worked for the purpose of altering only the self or the place of working. It is you who need to be altered. As a result of altering you, of course, you harmonize the rest, because that's what they say. This is done in the knowledge that to aid the self in polarization towards love and light is to aid the planetary vibration. Let me repeat this because this is important for wanderers. So one of the questions that I get a lot is like, how do I help the planet? Because I know I'm a wanderer. I just got the memo, so I need to work. Tell me what to do. And so, well, here's the answer. This is done, is white magic, altering of the self, in the knowledge that to aid the self in polarization towards love and light, aiding yourself is to aid the planetary vibration. So you first know that aiding yourself is aiding the planet in polarization. Quite simple. I love that the answer to all of these wonders is work on yourself. It's that simple. You see? So don't complicate it. All right, we can move on. More questions. Question 17, Don says, the change in consciousness should result in a greater distortion towards service to others, towards unity with all, and toward knowing in order to serve. Is this correct? And are there any other desired results? I like this, actually. Ron likes it too and says, these are commendable phrases. Commendable phrases. The heart of white magic is the experience of the joy of union with the Creator. Aha! This joy will, of necessity, radiate throughout the life experience of the positive adept. It is for this reason that sexual magic is not restricted solely to the negatively oriented polarizing adepts, but when most carefully used, has its place in high magic, as it, when correctly pursued, joins body, mind, and spirit with the one infinite Creator. Fantastic. Thank you. There's more to this answer, of course, but let's board this. Ross says that, first of all, what Don said was beautiful, actually. Change in consciousness should result in a greater distortion towards service to others. Sure. Toward unity with all. Yes, in the direction of unity. Thank you. And toward knowing in order to serve. Yes, learning in order to serve. The more you learn, the more you can serve. The more you know, learning of the self, of course. That's what it is. I mean, you are the logos realizing itself in this separation. So the more you know yourself, the more you can be this logos and shine for others. You become the sun. See? It's not that poetic to say, you're my sunshine, because you are. Right? I mean, in terms of Ra, we would say, yes, this is appropriate. Sunshine is quite accurate. I love making fun of Ra. So the heart of white magic is the experience of the joy of union with the Creator. Can you imagine that there is only one way to join with the Creator? Nonsense. There's infinite ways to feel the joy of the Creator. The union. This is what yoga is. Yoga means union. You see, that's why we have Bhakti Yoga, Karma Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Jnana Yoga, and so on. There are all kinds of yogas. At the time of the Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, used to be like 80 different yogas. Whatever. All of them are practices. What really matters is that feeling of joining with the Creator. Now Ra says this joy will of necessity radiate throughout life experiences of positive adept. Of course, just you being in union with everything will radiate others, and people were going to say, It's quite funny when people tell you, it's really nice to be around you. When you were kids, probably, people got around you and say like, I kind of feel safe with you somehow. I feel like I can trust you. And, you felt awesome because you said, yeah, something inside me wants to help. You see? So that is the positive adept. It is for this reason that sexual magic is not restricted solely to the negatively oriented polarizing adepts. Of course, it can be used for the same purpose in union, positivity. See, sex in orgasm dissolves the self. Try to find yourself in an orgasm. You can't. And this is why also masturbation is regarded as well as part of moving this energy. The Taoists know this as well, this self-cultivation. And it's this one energy of feeling, of moving your own joy. That is the same joy of the creation is. It's orgasmic, as people call it. Of course, this can be deranged in many ways because we have been sexually repressed in so many ways, so be it. But we're here talking about sexual magic, which is, it's amazing to really join with your partner and the person that you love, that you feel this connection, there's a union of all 5 senses, 6 senses if that's possible too, and dissolve together, in this enjoyment of the energies that are flowing through the body, the mind, and spirit is being channeled. So you can see why sexual magic can be used for sure. All right. Ra says, to finish this up, any purpose which you may frame should, we suggest, take into consideration this basic union with the one infinite creator, for this union will result in service to others of necessity. So quite simple at this point. It's understandable to see that any purpose which we use in other words, it's any use that we can do for magic must have, of course, the union with the one creator. That's what we have in mind, right? That's the seeker. The seeker seeks the one. For this union will result in service to others of necessity. Becomes automatic. Service becomes automatic. All right. Question 18. Don says, there are, shall I say, certain rules of white magic. I will read this few that I have written, and I would like for you to comment on the philosophical basis or reasoning behind these, and add to this list any of importance that I have neglected. So Don is going to read a list here and says, first, a special place of working, preferably constructed by the practitioners. Second, a signal or key, such as a ring, to summon the magical personality. Third, special clothing worn only for the workings. Fourth, a specific time of day. Fifth, a series of ritual sound vibratory complexes designed to create the desired mental distortion. Sixth, a group objective for each session. Would you comment on this list, please? And Ra is like, okay. To comment upon this list is to play the mechanic which views the instruments of the orchestra and adjusts the tunes the instruments. You will note that these are mechanical details. The art does not lie herein. The one item of least import is what you call the time of day. This is important in those experiential nexi wherein the entities search for the metaphysical experience without conscious control over the search. The repetition of workings gives this search structure. In this particular group, the structure is available without the need for inevitable sameness of times of working. We may note that this regularity is always helpful. So first of all, that list that Don gave, I would just encapsulate it into preference. Do you want to do all of that stuff? Is that helpful for you? Then sure, all of that is, do we need to add things, take things away? No, it's all about preference. What do you want to do? Like I said, I'm very basic, just to talk about my experience again. I'm very basic in the way that I approach everything. I don't do rituals. I have been in rituals and I have learned rituals and so on, but I don't. My practice is just probably, sometimes I even think that I should add some sort of complexity to it, but every time I think about it, I'm just like, that's not my thing. Do I want to wear something? No, just not my thing. And so that's me. But people like to, get dressed up and get their quartz. Julie likes to be with her crystals and all kinds of things, and seeds and plants and things like that. All of that is appropriate, but it really is up to you. Like Ross said, this is like the mechanic tuning into the instruments and adjusting it, but that's it's probably not that important. Now, the one item of least import is the time of the day. Doesn't matter. Doesn't really matter. This is important only in those moments wherein entities search for the metaphysical experience without conscious control over the search. This is important in those experiential nexi wherein the entities without conscious control over the search. So this seems to be more in ritualistic, like say temples, church, monasteries, and so on, where they have set principles of the time of the day, if they do this and that. That is no conscious control over the search. They're just allowing things to go in the flow of things, because that's what they do. And they don't do it because, well, some may do it because they're supposed to do it, but yeah, that to me is what they're saying here. The repetition of workings gives this search structure. Right, the repetition of workings is going to give the search structure. In this particular group, the structure is available without the need for inevitable sameness of times of working. That's cool. That's how they work. We may note that this regularity is always helpful. The regularity, I suppose, they're talking about doing it regularly. Some people say, I'm just not good at meditation. Every time I sit down, I just feel like I don't. I can meditate. Well, the answer to that is just keep meditating. And if you keep finding the same issue, keep confronting it, keep observing it. But that's beyond the scope of this video. Regularity is always helpful. It's not mandatory, but it's helpful. Nothing is mandatory. So yeah, all this ritual stuff, meh, is what Ross says. Question 19. Don says, you stated in a previous session that Ra searched for some time to find a group such as this one. I would assume that the search was for the purpose of communicating the law of one. Is this correct? Ra says, this is partially correct. We also, as we have said, wish to attempt to make reparation for distortions of this law set in motion by our naive actions of your past. So we're switching gears here. Don wants to make a question that we'll read in a little bit, but Ra has said in the past, we search for this group. We search for an instrument like this one so we can transmit the law of one. And so Ra says, yes, it's true that we search for the purpose of transmitting the law of one, because that's all we want to talk about. But we will answer your questions about UFOs and cattle mutilations and close encounters and pyramids and so on, if you want to, because we're here to serve. But we came here to give the law of one. But it's partially correct, because they also came here to attempt to make reparations for distortions of the law that they set in motion when they gave pyramids, instructions to Akhenaten, and so on. The law of one got distorted greatly, and so they feel compelled to come here and do that as well. Not just give it first time we're giving it. No, we're here to make some sort of reparations, if possible. So Don says, can you tell me if what we have covered the necessary... I love this question. I love Don. Don is lovable. Oh my God. Can you tell me if we have covered the necessary material to this point to, if published, make the necessary reparations for the naive actions? Oh, this is one point where I just want to hug and kiss him. Hug and kiss the man, please. So beautiful. Ross says, we mean no disrespect for your service, but we do not expect to make full reparations for these distortions. We may, however, offer our thoughts in the attempt. The attempt is far more important to us than the completeness of the result. The nature of your language is such that what is distorted cannot, to our knowledge, be fully undistorted, but only illuminated somewhat. Why do I want to kiss Don here? Because he's saying like, oh my God, maybe we have completely, have we made the necessary reparations for those naive actions? I love him. I really do. And, you can see that Don wanted to, like, in his mind, he's like, oh man, I hope this was it. You guys are fine after this. But that's not the nature of it. You see, the nature of repairing distortions, like Ross says, probably impossible to repair them. Not because it's a bad thing, but because once it's been shaped, it's been shaped. And it just takes on a different direction. But at least they can alleviate it, right? And so that's what they want to do. Really enlightening for us when Ross says the attempt is far more important to us than the completeness of the result. So forget about the result, just the attempt to want to do something. That's what's important. That's what creates the foundation for the world to change. That's what Ra gave here. All right, we have 2 more questions and we're done. Don says, when you say you search for this group, this is book 5 material, by the way. It's not in the original books. When you say you search for this group, what do you mean? What was your process of search? I asked this question to understand more the illusion of time and space. Ra says, consider the process of one who sees the spectrograph of some complex of elements. It is a complex paint sample. Let us say, for ease of description, we of Ra knew the needed elements for communication which had any chance of enduring. We compare our color chip to many individuals and groups over a long span of your time. Your spectrograph matches our sample. In response to your desire to see the relationship betwixt space-time and time-space, may we say that we conducted the search in time-space. For in this illusion, one may quite readily see entities as vibratory complexes and groups as harmonics within vibratory complexes. So, a couple of things here. Don wants to know how they saw Carla, Don, and Jim in the harmonics that were needed. So how did this happen? And Ross says, well, let's imagine that we're going to see the spectrograph, which is the spectrum of vibrations in terms of energy centers, metaphysics, the violet ray, in a graph. It's very limited, I'm sure, but the way I see it is just like they see colors. Let's just put it that way. They see colors. The vast majority don't match my vibration until they saw them and said, aha, we see you. We compare our vibration with your vibration and say there's a match. We can communicate. See, it's like when people have this spiritual awakening, this consciousness expansion, and they keep seeing everybody else like, no match. Can't talk to you about all this stuff. And then you start attracting people who are a match for you, and you say, yay, I can talk about this and that and the other. And so that's what Ra, in essence, did. Now, they say that in response to your desire to the relationship, to know the relationship between space-time and time-space. Oh God, apologies. The question is not uninterested. I don't know why I'm yawning. But okay, so this gives a little bit of a view in terms of how Ra in time-space. Well, first of all, they saw them in time-space. And they say, in this illusion in time-space, one may quite readily see entities as vibratory complexes and groups as harmonics within vibratory complexes. So they see each one of us as vibratory complexes and then harmonics within the configurations. So when you're with somebody, you have a gray match and you guys vibrate together in a way. This happened actually recently with somebody. I was doing some collaborations in my Spanish channel, and people saw that we had a great match, and suddenly in our most recent one, a lot of people said like something's off, like there's no longer a match. It doesn't mean that one of us is in the wrong path or anything, just denotes that there is no more of a match, because we're talking about different things. And where I am concerned with non-duality, she is concerned with other topics. And the only reason I'm mentioning this is because it's a beautiful way to depict how there is no harmony anymore between vibratory complexes. And in this case, they saw Don, Carla, and Jim, like when the three of them are together, it's perfect. They cannot do it independently or with other people. It's the three of them. And that's why Ra kept saying, you have a harmony that will prevail anything else. Just continue with this love and light that you guys recirculate with each other, and you'll be able to do just fine. So there you go. Now here we go with the last answer or question. Don says, I see the most important product of this communication being a vehicle of partial enlightenment for those incarnate now who have become aware of their part in their own evolutionary process. Am I correct in this assumption? Beautiful answer we got here. Ra says, you are correct. We may note that this is the goal of all artifacts and experiences which entities may come into contact with, and is not only the property of Ra or this contact. So there's more, but I'll just read it after this, because here's the essence of the last answer or question. Don is actually saying, I see the most important product of this communication, meaning the most important thing of us transmitting or channeling this, is a vehicle for partial enlightenment. Yes, for those incarnate, people who read the material, who have become aware of their part in their own evolutionary process. In other words, awakened people. So let me rephrase Don's question with my own words. I see this raw contact, the channel information, as being a vehicle or a method for partial enlightenment for those who want to read it, because they have woken up. They have become aware of their own spirituality. What is Ra's answer? Perfect. They say, you are correct. We may note that this is the goal of all artifacts and experiences. In other words, objects, situations, relationships, activities, practices, anything. All of this have the same goal. It's not only the property of Ra or this contact. They're saying, I love them. I just love him. See, they're saying, please don't think that the law of one or Ra is the vehicle for enlightenment, or partial enlightenment for that matter. It is anything. It is you going out and breathing fresh air, or facing the death of your spouse or your children, something that seems very tragic. And it is indeed tragic, of course, I admit it. Or drinking coffee, or simply watching a movie, or hugging somebody, or reading a nonsensical book like non-duality. No sense. You see, all of this have the same goal, to provoke this seeking of the, because what is enlightenment? See, Don is saying is a vehicle of partial enlightenment. What is enlightenment? To become aware that you are aware, or to become aware that you are awareness and everything is awareness. See, that's a way to summarize it. So I love this answer. I really do. All right, I'm going to finish this just reading the last part because I have it here in a slide. So Ross says, we find that this instrument has neglected to continue to remind itself of the need of holding some portion of energy back for reserve. This is recommended as a portion of the inner program to be reinstated, as it will lengthen the number of workings we may have. This is acceptable to us. The transfer energy grows quite low. We must leave you shortly. Is there any brief query at this time? But that's it. That's all the session 71. They just finish as usual with their spiel of saying you are more conscious. You're so conscientious. Remain most fastidious about the alignments of the appurtenance. Later they realized that Ron was talking about their lines of questions. So keep the questions pure and we will be able to transmit the most pure message. And so they did. So that's it. What am I going to say? Conclusions. I have to reflect a little bit because this was a lot. Knowing the self, everything goes back to that. There's that one answer, I think it was question 15, working with the unmanifested self. Just go back to that and get the whole idea of it. I think I explained it pretty well to the degree that I could at that moment. But again, I can keep talking about this because this is the process of flowing with life. As we say, flow with the universe. Well, the unmanifested self is that resource, constant, only met by resistance of the apparent self. You see? So, yes, looking at yourself constantly, exploring the self. When I said you are projecting yourself out there, it's not the other way around. It's not like the outside is projecting itself onto you. It's not true. This is the separate way. And it's not the way of oneness, but separation. So I feel like my conclusions are all the same, honestly. I only take a little bit of different. And truly, I mean, oneness goes back to the sameness. So I'm trying to find words to say the same thing over and over again, aided by the different discussion that we have here. But it all goes back to know yourself, know who you are. Go back to that over and over again. Because as long as you have issues or problems, you have to keep questioning who is the one who has the problems. What is that claims to have a problem or an issue or a doubt or a question? See, going back and back and back. And that's it. That's all I got. It was a long video. I hope you enjoyed it. I enjoyed definitely this last part of session 71. But I have nothing else to say. You know where to find me. In the description is all the information to talk to me, find out how can I help you better. As I have said, I want to give a shout out to everybody who listens to this in Spotify, iTunes, or whatever other platform outside of YouTube. It's a lot of you. I'm grateful for your continuous listening, support, and just being there. Like I always say, it's nice to know that there's people out there who can listen to this message and say, yes, I agree. Not because you're agreeing with me, but because we're agreeing with a perennial philosophy that I am so in love with. So that's it. That's all I got. Thank you again. I love you, my other self. And I'll see you in session 72.